Thank you, Hector. 21 minutes is perfect on time. As we have seen, the aerospace PERTE is a key tool to increase the capabilities in the space, all the space sector in Europe. We've got like many fields which are involved, like micro launchers, the entrepreneurs, the Spanish Space Agency, and you have seen how many of these projects are benefiting from it. We also learned about the Atlantic constellation, and we got like some breaking news, or at least for me there were breaking news, which are that the interest of the UK and Greece to join this Atlantic constellation. So thank you, Hector, for this information. And yeah, I think it's been very interesting. I hope you enjoyed. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I really enjoy it, and I think that it's a fantastic first step in this afternoon business discussion. So the next panel that we'll have here today, it will be related to understanding the new space investment landscape. So I know that this morning Geraldine has been giving us some commercialization ideas, talking about public investment, this 9% increase from last year, also saying that Europe is catching up on private investment, but there is also lots of interesting ideas that we'll be discussing here this afternoon. So some key aspects like the development stage of your organization to understand this landscape, also how specialized is your sector and where to find the correct funding for you, even if it's a global or a regional approach, what you are trying to create. So new space sector is a rapidly evolving sector. So the different organizations that are looking for investment need to adapt. They need to think potentially in partnerships, in innovation, and also to create adaptive business models. So the panelists will be discussing emerging trends, defining investment prospects also, and at the end, discuss the different directions that the investment sector is taking related to the new space. So I think that they will be answering in some way the question that we are all asking ourselves. What is the recipe of success when we are talking about investment in new space? So the panel will be led by Oriol Sans. He's the senior startup manager at Divisió, the competitiveness agency of the Catalan government. He holds a management degree from ESADE and a master of international management from Arizona State University. He had previous roles in different finance organizations like Arthur Andersen and Inverride Seed Fund. So please welcome the panelists to the stage and give them a big round of applause.
Thank you, good afternoon. And as the MCs have said, okay, this panel is about investment opportunities. So I would like to call the speakers, please. If Matteo Cascinari, general partner at Primo Space, can join the stage. Ted Elvhage from Rymdkapital, if you can join the stage. Anaïs, please, if you can join the stage. Anaïs is investment management at SpaceFounders. And finally, Philip Thomas, if you can join the stage, he's head of the vision at the ScaleUp program at the European Space Agency. Okay, so running tight on schedule, so I will not make any introductions. Just one thought, okay? We are talking about opportunities. Here we have investors, accelerator programs, so there should be some opportunities that we are going to see right now. Okay, guys. So there's going to be some content. Okay, I would like to ask the first question to Matteo. If you can make us a short introduction about you and also what you do at Primo Ventures.
Okay, I'm one of the 3 general partners of Primo Ventures. Maybe it's more relevant what we are doing. We are a venture capital firm investing only in space, just in space, whatever it is space related, so downstream, upstream, midstream, whatever. At a European level, even if we are Italian, because of the rules constraints, we must invest most of our capital in Italy. But we've done 12 investments so far, and 4 of them are outside of Italy. Actually, one of them is here in Spain, actually in Barcelona, Pangea, which is an excellent company. You should be proud to have one of those companies here in your territory, in your region. One that can be a leader, a global player in that industry. But we can invest also in the US, and we've done some investments in UK, in Israel, and in Switzerland. We are an early stage investor, so we invest tickets that goes from a minimum to 100K, let's say, up to 5 million in the first installment. And we have 86 million under management. Approximately, we are at 30–40% of deployment, capital deployment. As I said, we've done 12 investments. We're going to close another 3 or 4 investments before the end of this year, so we're heading to 16 investments. And our investment period will end in July 25. And by that time, we should have done at least 20–25 investments in Italy and outside of Italy.
Okay, thank you, Matteo. And now that you were talking to me about what you've seen those days, okay, that you were so happy and impressed by that. So what you guys do at Rymdkapital?
Yes, so first of all, if you didn't notice that, they have a timeline on investing a lot of money in a very short timeline. So if you have a venture, you should talk to Matteo because he must invest before the deadline, which is the really cool thing with venture capital. So my background is I'm an investor, entrepreneur from the beginning, and I'm also the European Business Angel Network Executive Space Committee Chairman. And what that means is that we have a lot of business angels around Europe, where we work together to help people to invest in space, or employees of space companies. People like you sitting in this audience right now, how do you actually get started investing in space? The other thing I do is that you spoke about Rymdkapital, which is my first VC fund in space. A couple of years ago, I, by accident, invested in space. And believe me, I'm not from the space industry. I thought it would be the last thing I would ever invest in my life. And now I'm actually starting the first venture capital in the Nordics that ever done NewSpace. And actually, I'm even doing more than that. I'm selling all my assets. I used to have a real estate company. I used to have some other investments. I think my track record is like 6 times the multiple of invested capital. So I have a good track record. But I'm not doing AI, I'm not doing quantum, I'm not doing life science unless it's connected to space, which means stuff that you guys are doing in here. And then what we're doing is that in the beginning of next year, we're closing the first closing of something called the Expansion Fund. And it's based in Paris and in Stockholm. And what it happens is going to be a 300 million euro fund investing in space, which means that if you have some great ideas, we'll be happy to help you to realize those. So that's what we're doing. We invest.
Okay, so Ted, I assume that after this talk, you guys can contact them.
Yes.
Because you're going to be still here for some time. And the next speaker is Anaïs Van Wynsberghe from SpaceFounders.
Yeah.
In this case, how you help companies, how you invest, how you accelerate them.
I think it's a good transition because we both accelerate and invest. So basically, SpaceFounders is an accelerator of European space tech startups. Whose aim is basically to help identify the next future space tech champions and support them. It was initiated in 2021 by the French Space Agency, the University of Bundeswehr in Munich, and the Italian Space Agency.
Good.
And SpaceFounders France, which is the French Space Agency subsidiary, also operates equity investments, and one of them is actually Pangea, so we are also sharing a portfolio deal with Matteo. Just a bit of context also about myself. I was previously working for Carista, which is a French venture capital firm based in Paris. And I was here when we raised the first French space-dedicated fund, which is called Rymdkapital. Led some research on space debris and eventually joined SpaceFounders to operate equity investments.
Okay, thank you, Anaïs. And then finally, Philippe. This European Space Agency, one of the cornerstones of this sector. What can you tell about what you do?
Sure. So first of all, can I thank you for the welcome. My first time in Barcelona, and I think it's an amazing city, and I think a fantastic venue for the Congress here. So I'm the head of the ScaleUp program in ESA. It's an optional program, which obviously member states subscribe to participate in. And the aim of the program is to support companies through inception all the way through to scaling up. So at every stage in the company's life cycle, we intend to provide support. So we have 2 long-standing activities which have very long heritage. One is the Business Incubation Network, and we have ESA BICS in Spain, in Madrid, and in Barcelona. We have a network of brokers as well, who basically match non-space companies to space services. We also provide patenting services, which is, again, key business skills that you need for entrepreneurs. And most recently, we are rolling out a network of fee labs. And these fee labs are essentially aimed at identifying high commercial potential R&D. And the aim is to bring everything under one roof so that you can provide a consolidated solution with adequate support to translate it into a commercial service or a product. And the other key element within the ScaleUp program is invest. And this is where we actually provide funding to companies, either through specific campaigns. So at the moment, we have an IOD, IOV campaign, which is running, which is due to close soon, actually. And we also have open calls. And this is where companies come to us with proposals, and we assess them, and we're able to provide some capital to make deals happen, to start initiating that deal flow. And again, by way of introduction, I'm quite new to ESA. I joined in June of this year, so I'm new to this universe of ESA. But previously, I was working in UK government. I was the deputy director for space, and I was also responsible for strategic programs and investments. And also, I was deputy director for investment in Scotland. So, I bring a bit of that knowledge of space, government, working with industry, the investment challenges, and how do you start to deliver that in a European ecosystem, which is very, very complex.
Okay, so now you know more about the speakers, more about the organizations, more about maybe how you can contact them, okay, or apply. There are calls, in our cases there are like direct contact in order to receive their investment. Okay, the next question would be also for you, Philip. We will go the other way around, and it's about how you see the new space investment landscape, especially with your broader view, and what subsectors you focus on, okay? Because we have been talking about new space, and now we need more concrete things. And finally, maybe some of the future trends that you see, that's what people expect. It's difficult, okay? But the audience, usually they expect, what's your investment? Not advice, okay, because we could get into, but where you see things are going. Yeah. And also, if you would like to mention one company that you think that has something, special, you are also welcome to do that.
Okay, all right.
So there are like three questions in one.
Okay. I might pass on the third one.
Well,
yeah. So look, I think as Geraldine, my director, presented this morning, I think investment in Europe is quite healthy, right? Certainly surprisingly outperforming investment in the US. But nonetheless, I think the reality is that we are going to experience a bit of tightening in the financial markets, right? So investors are going to be looking for assured return, right? And space by its very nature is risky. And I think there's a question around, is the risk properly understood? And are we able, when I say we, it's the companies, it's the institutional backers, it's the national space agencies, it is organizations like ESA. Are we able to demonstrate, security of revenue? Are we able to demonstrate a strong case that revenue flows will be generated from whatever these space ventures are? Because I think very often you look at the problem of investment through a technology lens. And the technology may be proven, the technology is well understood, but ultimately you have to look at three things. There are customers, there are companies, and there are markets. And I think the customer element and the market element is really, really key to unlock investment. So I don't think the challenge is, I don't think there's a lack of capital. The capital exists. But the question is, where are those robust investment cases? because you have different classes of investors. You have, you have major pension funds who are sitting on billions of euros. And, some of these pension funds, at least I know from my previous roles, the minimum ticket that they would look for is 500 million, right? And then when you look at space, you're thinking, well, are we able to offer something of that scale which will get the biggest investors out of bed in the morning, right? So I think, and I'll move into the sort of second part of your question now. What are future trends? I think scale is really important, right? Scale is important because it will get the big investors out of bed, but it'll also signify that you are serious about the business of space, right? I think the other thing that's really important is, do we have the markets in place operating effectively to sustain those deal flows, right? Some of those markets are what I would call traditional markets, right? You can take existing space services, Earth observation, SATCOMs, PNT, and you can apply them to non-space sectors, and you can make the case, which is your industries, whether it's utilities, whether it's agri-food, whether it's transport, whether it's logistics. The challenge there is to educate those companies about the use of space and what is the efficiency and the cost and the profitability levers that can be pulled through the application of space, right? That's well understood, but I think some of the big opportunities are in the creation of future space markets. We know there are going to be future space markets. The question is, who is going to build them, who is going to develop the regulation to put them in place, and who is going to capitalize on that first mover advantage. So for me, I think that is one of the biggest challenges and opportunities that we face in Europe, because I think it is a space race, and the race has already started. And the question is, have you got the right running shoes on?
Yeah, okay. Nice metaphor at the end. Okay, Anaïs, what about you? What kind of opportunities do you see? What subsectors, geographies you're specialized in?
Maybe I will try to illustrate a bit more to complement also on what you said. I think my favorite topic would be the companies leveraging on the space tech data or technologies. So just to illustrate, for example, we have an alumni that is called Amphitrite, and they are doing oceanography. So they are identifying and analyzing ocean floods as to optimize the routing of the maritime shipping industry, which is super impactful. So this kind of, I think, transition between space tech and Earth, I think you have like wonderful use cases. This one is one of my favorite because it's also a mix between impact and regulation. It's super interesting also how regulations create momentums, and for them it's basically the shipping industry is undergoing huge regulations when it comes to carbon index, when it comes to carbon taxes and so on. So for them it's huge. They did a first test with Dreyfus, which showed already a 5% gain on oil, a 70 minutes gain also, and it's just the first test, so you really have huge impact when it comes to leveraging on those technologies.
And you guys, in the accelerator program, you work with challenges, for example, or you work, challenges?
What do you mean, challenge?
Challenge means that, for example, a company says, well, I'm having an issue with that, with that, or whatever, and you launch a challenge. In this case, I assume that you don't work with challenges, so...
Yeah.
Okay, that was just to cover that. In this case, Ted, what about you? What are you looking for when you invest?
Yeah, wow, thank you for asking. So I'm looking for you guys out there, actually. So I think if I may iterate on some of the things that you guys said, because it's so nice when you already started the conversation there. So the thing why I invest in space is, and only in space, because that's what I do, is because rocket science is not rocket science anymore. We know how to do it. I mean, we knew how to go to Mars a long time ago. The problem is the commercialization part of that, which I totally agree with. The other part is, will the investor get money back?
Yep.
And so when you say, what stuff are you looking at? And in Europe so far, space is too small to say, I will only do Earth observation. I mean, we really have 4 segments. You have the launchers. Oh, sorry, we don't have the launchers. But, America has the launchers anyway, right? And then we have the satellites. Cool. So we have the satellites. And then we have like the ground segment, which is pretty big. The first 2 is like 10 billion a year each. And then you have the ground segment, like 140 billion. And then you have like the Earth observation, 140 billion. And people don't even know that 15% of the European BNP is actually dependent on space. If we shut it down, I wouldn't even find to this building today. We are totally lost if we don't do that. So on your question, what do I look at? I'm looking at the business, coming back to what we're doing. Of course, incredible business like you're talking about. But my first question in my head, I'm not going to tell you because I'm going to ask you other nice questions like, how are you doing that? Are you working with ESA? Or are you doing this? Do you know Matteo? But my real question is really, okay, if I give you 1 million euros, how much will I get back and when will I get it back?
Yeah.
Because I want my money back. And this is the thing with VC. We buy low and we sell high. If you can prove to me that I will get 10x, 5x, 20x, 30x on whatever I invest in, I have the money. I always have the money. I will find the money. The problem is not risk in space investment. The problem is the upside, which is the market. And the markets we're talking about don't even exist yet. So how do we know? That's why we need the entrepreneurs, namely you guys in this audience, to help us out. We are now in Europe unleashing the power of the entrepreneurs. So who am I backing? The visionary entrepreneurs, those who can give me back 10x.
Okay.
That's the short answer.
I think, it was crystal clear. And in this case, Ted, would you like to mention any startup that you think it could be inspiring, being in your portfolio or not? Or are you...
Wow.
Like
we heard several inspiring companies here today. Like, I just love most of and the ones I actually discovered for Spain, I didn't know about. So thank you very much for having me here. We're definitely going to talk afterwards. So, but if I'm going to say something about inspiring, so we have one company, which is, by the way, by case of transparency, it's a micro launcher, and I already invested in it. It's my reason to go to space. It's called Python Space. They're based in Sweden and the US, and they're doing a micro launcher. And they have like a blackjack rule, which is that they're going to reach orbit with only 21 people. Because if you're 22, you're going to be fat and you can't make the profits. So I like that kind of thinking. Why do I like them? Not only them, but everyone else who has like a business mindset. Because it's not rocket science anymore. We can solve that with the help of ESA, with the help of the accelerators, with the help of very intelligent investors. So I think that we need more of you guys becoming entrepreneurs. So, if you want to be an entrepreneur, talk to me later on.
Okay, very convincing. In your case, Matteo, you were like in a venture capital that had like 2 legs. Okay, one like general, okay, or ICT, and the other one space. So that means that for sure you guys have thought about the opportunities that the space sector will provide. So in this case, how you see this sector, the opportunities or the trends that you foresee in the near future and maybe in the long term?
Yes. Well, first of all, I work only in the space area, not the digital one. But let me step back a little bit on the environment, the landscape, investment landscape, because when we started the journey to build the VC fund, it was 2018, which is not last century, it was 5 years ago, and there were no VC investors in Europe. There was just Seraphim, which is in the UK, so I don't know if it's in Europe or not.
It's in Europe. It's in Europe, but
yeah,
not in the
Europe
European Union.
Maybe not EU.
Okay, anyway, if we consider UK, Europe, there was just Seraphim, and then we were the second fund, then some others, 4, 5, 6, and now Expansion, which has 300 million. I mean, in 5 years, in 3 years, from 2020, when we get to the first closing, the landscape is completely changed. So startups do accelerators that were not there, and there are a lot of accelerators. Just in Italy, there are 3 or 4 accelerators dedicated to space. So I think the landscape has changed, for sure. The distance between Europe and USA is huge, but we've done a lot of a road, so we have a long road ahead of us, but we've done something. So I like always to see also the good things. Another thing that I want to say, and I like of this Congress, the huge accent on the commercialization, because usually we always talk about, when we go to Congress, we always listen about technology and so on. And the accent, the focus, the strong effort on the commercialization is not so present. This morning, Rafael started by saying that the real challenge is commercialization, and I strongly agree. So what we see, I strongly agree with Ted, we don't look at specific segments. For sure, cybersecurity, the downstream is completely undervalued. Then I give you one small statistics, but for sure there are some trends, some specific subsectors which are very interesting. But we look for great teams. That's make the difference. No matter in what kind of field you are, great teams are so rare. So the identification of good people is the most difficult thing. So then, obviously, the sector, it's important. The statistics that surprised me is that when we started our journey, we thought that the deal flow was full of downstream applications, while 2/3 of the investment opportunities were the typical opportunities of the space industry. And this is another thing that always I like to underline, because we always start this kind of Congress talking about space economy, but we end up by speaking about the space industry, which is a different thing. I mean, it's a part of the space economy. So the downstream is not so valued, and in that area, I think there are great opportunities and a long way to do.
Okay, so we have 10 minutes, okay, our last 10 minutes, and we were when we were supposed to end. So another question, and Matteo, you almost, unveil a little about your answer. And the name of this roundtable is the recipe for success, okay? And the recipe for success is the startup. It's also how you help startups. So what would you share with the audience on the recipe for success from a specialized venture capital fund? In your case,
success for us.
For success for the startup, which
maybe success for you. Yeah, exactly. The two things are very close. Well, first of all, I don't have the recipe, so I'm sorry, but I don't have it. Otherwise, it's going to be too easy. But some advices. The first one is, again, people. So start with a great team and hire good people. Because if you hire great people, everybody's going to want to be in that room where great people are. So first of all, people. Second, again, it has been said, focus on the market, focus on clients, on how big is the market, what is my offer, what is the pain of the customer. Because, it's natural for tech people focus on making things work, which is good. It's essential. But then you have to sell your things, and this is not so common as a focus. One another thing that can be helpful in the relationship among startups and investors, I always say, and which is my motto, don't go to VCs when you need money, not because we are not good in providing money, but you have to go in advance. You have to consider the relationship with investors, not a dot, but a line. It's a continuous activity. Obviously, when you are closer to the fundraising, you have to intensify your activity, but the relationship with the investors must be a continuous activity. And again, approximately 50% of our evaluation is about people, so you can't evaluate a team in 3 meetings or 4 meetings. If you know a person through many years or many different meetings, you have more elements to evaluate him and his team. And another important thing is focus on execution. Again, if you see a huge difference among the startups that we see is how much they execute. I mean, there are some companies that come back to you after 1 year and they've done nothing. I mean, while other companies, for example, Pangea, in 3 years with no money, very limited resources, they have achieve great results, and you see it. Mm-hmm. So if you have contact with investors, they can see how much you executed, and this is very important for our evaluation.
And Matteo, as a chef, how you help them to have the best dish, as a venture capital fund?
Well, again, the most important thing is the selection, so selecting good people, so you don't have to do too much in that way. But for sure, we don't give. The good thing of being a specialized investor is that you can help a lot startups in many ways, on the institutional side, on the political side, strategic side, and commercial side. I mean, there are companies that through us can get to the relevant people in huge companies in 1 week. Otherwise, if they do it by themselves, not because they're stupid or silly or not able, but I mean, it's different. We have contacts, we have networks. So, and also in the next fundraising, I mean, in others, I mean, I can speak with Ted and tell him that we have good portfolio companies that need money. We don't have the money to follow on. He can do it. So, I mean, it's this kind of help, I think it's very relevant for startups.
Okay, so Matteo has done the job for me, so Ted, what about you?
Yes, so obviously I'm adding value to whatever he says. I think we have different approaches as VCs, and I think that, compared to what you're doing at ESA, where you do a lot of actually practical stuff that actually helps the technical readiness things, and what you're doing at the Accelerator, both technical and relationships and business, which I'm sure you're going to tell us about in just a moment. I think that, people like myself sometimes think that we add something, but the best thing I can do sometimes is not to be in your way, to be honest. I mean, it's like I'm on this shotgun seat, right? And I'm changing the channels of the radio, testing the steering wheel, trying the brakes and stuff. That's just irritating. So I usually sit in the back seat, and said, maybe you should go to the right this time. Okay, you went to the left. Maybe you should go to the right this time. Okay, you went to the left. And then you crash, okay, maybe back out of this door and we'll do it again. And, so I think that, what sort of value add? It's really the network relationship. And in my case, what we do with expansion is that I get very involved in, sales and execution and negotiation globally, because I love sales, And if you're an entrepreneur and you don't love sales, you shouldn't be working with me, because I'm going to ask you every single day, what did you sell today, So, I think that you have a much more intelligent answer than I do, I'm only into sales and markets.
Which is also useful, I would say.
and in your case, Anaïs,
when it comes to the
how you help them in order to have the best recipe, or at the end of the day, the best dish?
For me, I think something super specific also to the space tech is the fact that you really need to reassure the investors, because it's quite new markets. So I would definitely go into the equity story building, which is super fundamental. First, I would say it's the cap table that you need to have clear and updated and exhaustive and fair. Don't arrive with too much illusion of your founders. It's nonsense for the VC to join. The second would be have the clearest possible capital need in mind, so that you are also able to let them know, let them have visibility on your next fundraising, next valuations, have this clear equity story also helps gain visibility as an investor. And the third point, also still related to the equity story, is the exit strategy. I think it's the main point when you're an investor is, how do I sell this? Not even how much, but even sometimes, how do I sell it? Will I sell it? Yeah. So it's super, something you can really do to help also the investors is to actually gather the data you can find on M&A and private equity operations, as to let them have more visibility and reassurance, I would say, on the markets. yeah, I think that would be the most important for an investors to have.
Okay, yeah, and especially cap table in companies that,
The equity story.
yeah,
let
that
them
have
know.
their
And I think it's all the more important also for your, it's not only for the investors and for the founders, it's also super important for your employees actually, because if you give them stocks and they don't see any value in it, how do you even hire the smartest ones that will understand that it's worth nothing at the end?
Okay, and Philippe, what about ESA?
Let me try and answer that question a bit differently, I think from a slightly different perspective. So I think, what's the secret recipe? I think there are three key ingredients, right? It's what I said before. It's companies, customers, markets. You need those three key ingredients. And we focus a lot on providing support for companies. In ESA, we have business incubation, we have brokers. The challenge, however, is where do you come in and how do you help companies when they're on that journey of scale? Do some companies want to scale, or do they feel that they have reached, that journey in their natural evolution? So I think, there's something about how do we help together with investors, together with, private investors, institutional investors, policy makers, how do we create the right commercial environment so that companies can cross that valley of death, right? And you don't end up with companies going to the US because that's where the big market is. That's where, you have billions of dollars of government-backed funding. And I think for me, one of the secret spices, if I can use that language, is you need to create demand in markets. Where is the demand coming from? And if you say, the phrase space is an infrastructure has been used quite frequently today, right? So if it's infrastructure, treat it like infrastructure in terms of financing, and identify what those commercial space infrastructure projects are, and what is the commercial model for those future big ticket space infrastructure projects. And I think if we can start to articulate what those look like, and I think we have seen some of those early steps being taken at Civil with Space Cargo and the move towards launchers, if we can try to articulate that a bit more and say, define that and say in 10 years, this is what we envision in terms of a mega project, in terms of space infrastructure, the financing will follow because you have created that demand signal already. And I think, for me, that's one of the key ingredients.
Okay, so thank you, Philippe. Thank you, Anaïs. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Matteo. And I hope we have more opportunities to network and share insight with the audience. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you. An applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.